It was a cold night in December and the snowfall had just begun for the season. It was 2018, a year I will never forget due to this incident. Everything was closed for a week due to heavy snowfall and I didn't want to stay at home throughout that week. So I called my girlfriend and we planned a small vacation over the phone that day. The next day we met and started traveling to the destination we had planned. It was my favorite time of the year to visit the countryside. I was with my girlfriend and we stayed at her dad's upstate home, which was usually used as a summer home. Since we couldn't plan something big on such short notice, the two of us decided to go camping in the nearby woods of that house during the snowfall season. The home had all the needed camping supplies, including the tent, so we parked there and took the camping stuff into the woods. All the trees were covered with snow, and we had a blurry vision of the outside due to the heavy snowfall. The night was dark as well. I've only been on camping trips a few times in my life, but I liked camping in this season because there are fewer bugs, and of course, you can't beat the foliage. We were camped out in a small circular clearing just big enough for our tent and campfire. We sat around the fire for about an hour, eating and just talking. Then we went inside the tent. We kept the fire going as it made my girlfriend feel safer and added a bit of warmth. Besides the sound of the crackling fire, we eventually started hearing leaves crunching in the distance. My girlfriend and I looked at each other. She put her finger up to her lip, and I could tell she was nervous. Fires usually repel wildlife from approaching, so as the crunching of the leaves got louder, it got more suspicious. The footsteps also sounded bipedal, like a human's footsteps. We couldn't hear any animals around us. The crunches got louder until they stopped around the fire. Then we noticed the shadow outline of someone standing out there, and then they sat down in one of the chairs, but they didn't say a word. So I finally decided I was going to peek my head out and check. I looked out at the campfire, expecting to see someone sitting on one of the chairs, but there was no one out there. I got up on my legs to look around the campsite into the trees and darkness. I didn't see anyone out there. My girlfriend was whispering something and it sounded like she was urgently trying to get my attention. So I crawled back inside and my girlfriend asked me who was outside and what did I see. I didn't know what to say because there was nothing I saw outside, but we both heard someone outside. I replied that there is no one outside. She couldn't comprehend the situation and started sobbing, and then she pointed towards the fire again. I looked at the wall of the tent and saw the shadow outline of the person sitting in the chair by the fire once again. I realized that was impossible, though. I crawled back out of the tent to look one more time, and both the chairs were still empty. Both of us started to grow mad with time. I went back inside and told my girlfriend to pack the necessary goods, and we are leaving right now. She didn't ask questions. She got straight up, took my hand, and followed me out of the tent. When she saw there was no one sitting in the chair, she screamed. I yelled at her to be quiet, and I led us through the near-total darkness in the direction back to the mobile home. While running, we heard this horrible groaning sound not too far away from us and one single loud crash of a tree branch or something. This caused both of us to scream and run even faster. We even heard someone running behind us but didn't see anyone. It was getting difficult to run in those heavy clothes with snow on the ground, but we didn't stop. We found the property by repeatedly pressing the car lock button until we finally heard the car horn. We went into the mobile home, locked the door, and hid under the covers in the safety of the bedroom. Still, I didn't feel entirely safe being surrounded by nothing but woods in every direction. And I was paranoid that whatever was out there followed us. I let my girlfriend sleep while I stayed up listening for sounds. I thought I heard a clicking or something from the front door of the home, but that might have been my paranoia playing tricks on me. I fell asleep eventually, and when we woke up, we went back for the tent and supplies, scared shitless while doing so. Nothing was moved except for the one chair we thought we saw that person was sitting on. It was knocked over. We packed our stuff and hurried back to the car, drove home, and that was our last camping adventure. A few years back, when I was in the 10th grade, I had stayed after school to get a little extra work done. It must have been a Thursday, sometime in the winter, maybe at the end of November. We no longer lived in my hometown, having moved to a peaceful forested community at the end of my 8th grade year. That day, the longer I stayed at the school, the colder it got. When the activity bus came to pick me up, it was almost dark, and fog smeared all over the streets. I was shivering due to the cold weather, as I was not prepared for it. Anyhow, I closed my jacket zip and covered my head with its hood. The bus was comparatively warm, which gave me comfort for some time until it dropped me off at about 9 p.m. at the gate of the community. Now, I had to walk my way towards home for the rest of the path in this cold, silent, and scary night. I had no one who could pick me up at the time, as my dad used to come home by 11 or sometimes 12 p.m. late at night. So instead of waiting, it was preferable to walk home quickly. Somehow, I was enjoying that walk towards my home. I was unaware of the danger I was leading myself into. Once I reached the creek's crossing, which is a twisted and turned crossing that made its way down the road, I stopped as usual to watch the lake just beside it. There had been a storm that knocked a fairly sized tree over onto the shoulder, leaving a decent dent in the railing. Normally, I spend about 15 to 20 minutes here, but that night, for whatever reason, I felt uneasy. I kept hearing something walking around in the dead leaves that covered the ground, like something big. However, I wrote this off as just being a lone deer or a bear. After all, they were all over the community this time of year. However, I just couldn't shake that uneasy feeling, so I continued up the hill without stopping. I feel that I should mention that I was blind to anything that wasn't close enough for me to touch because my glasses had broken, and I hadn't yet had the chance to get new ones. So, as I was walking, I began to become worried as I realized the sound of the leaves rustling as someone slashed something among them hadn't stopped. It had gotten closer. Whoever slashed whatever it was quickly caught up with me and began to maintain the distance. I know this because if I stopped walking, it would stop walking, and if I started walking again, it would wait a step before beginning to walk. I moved to the center of the road from my position at the far right of the road, fearing that if there was someone on that side and they turned out to be a creeper, they might try to grab me if I walked too close to the side. The road had a pretty bad reputation for incidents during this time of the day, and with this in mind, I was scared. I thought of turning around and looking back for the last time and decided to run or shout at this point. As I looked back, I saw a strange-looking man in creepy clothes and grimy teeth, smiling while looking at me. And as I looked back, he jumped into the trees and hid behind them. As I stood there, he kept on peeking from behind the tree with that spooky smile on his face. As I saw that person, initially I was shocked and couldn't move, but then I gained consciousness and quickly turned to run towards my home. At this point, I started yelling, "Help! Help!" thinking that if I could get to the house before that person caught me or someone came to help me, then I might be okay. I noticed then that as I began to run, the person began to run as well, and he didn't stop. I could hear him breathing heavily and trying to grab me just behind me. He didn't stop following me, even when I stopped for a family that I knew very well as they pulled up alongside me in their car. The mom of that family asked me if I needed a ride, saying that I looked exhausted, and I graciously accepted her offer, climbing into the back seat with her 3 daughters, 2 of whom waited for the bus and stopped with us every day. As I got in the back seat and the car ignited, I turned around to see if the person was still following me. And there he stood, in the middle of the road, with the same evil smile on his face, looking right at me. I didn't walk alone on that road ever again, as the memory of this incident still haunts me. And I think I'll always avoid walking that hill alone. It's the story of the times when I started working as a truck driver. I was excited and nervous as I had just started working for a transportation company, and it was the most difficult season for the truck drivers. Snowfall has always been a challenge for me to drive the vehicle. After some days of training, the company assigned me my first task. It was to drive alongside an experienced trucker named John. The company said John would show me the ropes, but I had never met him before and had no idea what to expect. They just told me that he would meet me at the truck station at 11 p.m. The night was dark and quiet when I arrived at the deserted truck station. It was so cold that I was wearing gloves, a jacket, and a cap, and covered my face with a muffler. I was wondering if John would recognize me in this attire. It was an overnight shift, and the place seemed eerily empty. I found the truck that I was assigned to, and was about to open the door when, out of nowhere, a man appeared before me. He started putting chains on the tires as we had a patch of road that was covered with snow, but we had to cross it anyway. He wasn't talking, so I asked him if he was John. The man simply nodded, showing no signs of friendliness, He just waved his hand and indicated to me to get in. I climbed into the truck and felt a little warm, but there was a continuous sense of unease around him. The man, John, took the driver's seat and placed his hands on the steering wheel. That's when I noticed something that sent shivers down my spine. There were stains of blood on John's hands. I asked him about it, but John didn't respond, saying it was nothing. Despite this strange encounter, I chose to ignore it and thought that maybe John was just a bit arrogant due to his experience. As we drove, John suddenly pulled over in the middle of nowhere and grabbed a bag. He told me to stay put and started walking towards a creepy old house nearby. I could see him disappear behind the snowfall until he disappeared completely into that creepy house nearby. I watched him as he entered the house and returned empty-handed. It was odd, but I decided to let it go as well. Back on the road, things took a turn for the worse. John deviated from the planned route. He looked expressionless, almost like a different person. At this point, I got an anxiety attack but tried to hide it as much as I could. Then we stopped at a remote truck stop. I thought we had stopped to remove the chains from the truck tires, as we had a clear road ahead of us from there. John got out of the truck and headed towards the bathroom, telling me to stay with the truck. I was looking at him going away and finally getting into the bathroom. As he got in, my curiosity got the best of me, and I got out to investigate this situation properly. I opened the truck's storage compartment and froze in terror at what I found. It was a lifeless body, all tied up and covered in blood. I screamed subconsciously but muffled it with my hand, trying to keep quiet. The truck stop was deserted, and no one was around that I could ask for help. With this fear gripping my heart, I realized that I needed to escape this horror as soon as I could. I checked the body to find the ID, and I found it in its pocket. And when I looked at it, my blood ran cold once again. The ID identified the body as John, and the face in the picture was the same as the dead man lying in front of me. But how was this possible? Who was I driving with this whole time? I had no answers. Gripping a lug wrench from the truck, I crept towards the bathroom where that person, who claimed to be John, went. Horrors of that night grew as I noticed that the bathroom was empty. That person had vanished into thin air. I started shivering as I went around as far as I could to find that person, but there was no sign of him anywhere nearby. Now I was alone in the middle of nowhere with a dead body over my head. I had no other option but to call the authorities. When they arrived, they combed the area as well, but they found no trace of the mysterious person. The truck stop was empty, and the whole situation became a nightmare. The body was recognized to be of John, the real one, the person I was supposed to ride with. Adding some more terror to this experience, the creepy house that the person went into in the middle of the trip was burnt down, leaving behind nothing but ashes and unanswered questions. To this day, I can't shake off the spine-chilling memory of that night, the mysterious disappearance, and the horrifying truth behind the dead body. And so, the tale of the cold night and my horrifying encounter with that mysterious person became a chilling legend in the company. I am still traumatized by the memory of my first night shift during that cold and chilly night that ended up as a nightmare that I will never forget.